New York City sun cast golden patterns on the waxed wooden floor of the notary office. Sitting in the front row, I watched the lawyer's hands as he carefully handled the sealed envelope containing the last will of my father, Ernest Miller. At 73 years old, I was now the patriarch. Although that title still felt strange to me, the room was immersed in that particular silence that accompanies the moments where money and death meet. My son, Mike, 45 years old, was sitting to my right. His impeccable suit and rigid posture betrayed a tension that I knew all too well. His wife, Ashley, beside him, kept her eyes fixed on her perfectly manicured nails. My niece, Sarah, the only other person present, had come out of respect rather than interest. My father had always considered her like a granddaughter. It was then that I heard it. A whisper, almost imperceptible, but it echoed in me like thunder. "If Grandpa changes his mind, make the envelope disappear," Mike whispered into Ashley's ear. Those words froze my blood, not because of their immediate meaning, but because they confirmed what I had suspected for months. My own son was eagerly awaiting my death. He was already calculating how to take over my estate, and he would not hesitate to manipulate the situation in his favor. That day, in that Manhattan office, I realized that history was repeating itself. My father had fought against my older brother's greed his entire life. Now it was my turn to face the same battle, but against my own son. I then remembered my father's words, spoken just weeks before his death. "Robert, distrust smiles that are too wide and hands extended when old age arrives. Love is measured by respect, not by promises." What he didn't know was that I had already overheard a similar conversation between Mike and Ashley 3 months earlier, when they thought I was asleep. A conversation about my supposed senility, about a lawyer specializing in elder guardianship, and about my house in Westchester that would belong to them anyway. It was that day, listening to the reading of my father's will, that I decided to get ahead of them and protect what I had built over a lifetime. Not out of greed, but out of dignity. My house in Westchester represented 40 years of my life. Every stone, every plant in the garden told a story. I had bought that plot of land after my marriage to Ellen when I was a young cardiologist at the City General Hospital. We had built that house stone by stone, saving after saving. The garden was Ellen's masterpiece. She loved the bougainvilleas that now climbed up to the second floor. After her death from aggressive cancer 15 years ago, I never thought of moving. This house was our shared creation, the silent witness to our love, the place where Mike had grown up. But feelings do not protect against ambitious children. Memories do not fend off malicious lawyers. The week following the reading of my father's will, I contacted a real estate agent, recommended by an old colleague from the hospital. Her name was Mary Foster, a woman in her 50s with bright eyes and a direct way of speaking that captivated me immediately. "Mr. Miller, this property is valued between $1.8 and $1.9 million in the current market. Westchester has appreciated a lot in recent years. I can get a good price for you. I need it to be fast and discreet." Mary looked at me with that expression that women who have seen enough of the world know how to adopt to avoid asking unnecessary questions. I understand family issues. I have seen children who suddenly become very interested in their parents' well-being when they feel the inheritance getting closer. Do not worry. I can sell it in 3 weeks if you accept a fair price. "How much?" $1.8 million. I have a young couple looking in this neighborhood. They already have the funds. They are just waiting to find the ideal house. Yours is perfect. 3 weeks. The time had come to dismantle 40 years of my life and start from scratch, packing every object, every photograph, every piece of my history into boxes that would depart for a place I did not yet know. I signed the documents that very day. During the afternoon, Mary explained every clause, every legal term, ensuring that I understood exactly what I was doing. The sale would be in cash, without financing, which meant the transaction could be closed in less than a month once we found the buyer. And where are you planning to move? She asked as she put the documents away in her briefcase. I don't know yet. I need a small, safe place where no one knows where I am. She nodded. I know a residential building in Brooklyn, apartments for seniors, but it is not a nursing home. They are independent apartments with 24-hour security. Cameras, a concierge, and many retired nurses live there. You could rent a two-bedroom apartment for $2,000 a month. Can I see it today? We went that same day. The building was modern, 6 stories with a clean facade and a small, well-kept garden at the entrance. The concierge greeted us, calling Mary by her name. He had evidently brought clients there before. The third-floor apartment was empty and smelled of fresh paint. A small living room with a window facing the street. A fully equipped kitchen with new appliances. A bedroom large enough for my bed and a closet, and a full bathroom with safety grab bars already installed. It is perfect, I said. Don't you want to think about it? There is nothing to think about. I will take it. I signed the lease that same day. I paid 3 months in advance, using the money I'd saved. So many thousands of dollars that it hurt to withdraw them from my account, but it was an investment in my freedom. For the following 2 weeks, I led a double life. During the day, I was still the Robert that Mike knew, the available father, the indulgent grandfather, the old man who supposedly needed help with everything. At night, I secretly packed my clothes, my important documents, my photographs, the few items of sentimental value that I could not resign myself to leaving behind. I hired a small moving company, the kind that asks no questions and works only in cash. I paid $500 to have everything transferred to the new apartment on a day when I knew Mike would be at work. Mike continued visiting me more frequently, always with Ashley, always with that look of concern that I now recognized as completely fake. They brought food I hadn't asked for, proposed making unnecessary repairs around the house, and constantly questioned me about my health. Dad, you look tired. Are you sleeping well? Of course, son. It is just that I have noticed you are distracted lately. Yesterday you called me and told me the same thing twice. Frankly, I don't remember. I lied. I knew exactly what he was doing. He was building his narrative, documenting symptoms he would later use against me. Every visit was a mental record of supposed forgetfulness, of confusion, of signs of decline that only existed in his convenient imagination. Ashley took pictures. She thought I didn't notice, but I heard her take out her phone and photograph the inside of the house, the furniture, the rooms, everything they would later claim as part of the family estate that needed to be preserved. 2 days before the sale was finalized, Mike arrived with a proposal. Dad, Ashley and I have been thinking, how would you like to come live with us for a few months just to try it out? You could have the guest room. You would have company. You wouldn't have to worry about the house. And what would happen to this house in the meantime? We could rent it out and get extra income that would be useful for you. I would take care of finding reliable tenants, collecting the rent, everything. You would just have to enjoy time with your family. It was so obvious it hurt. Once I lived with them, once the house was rented under Mike's name, it would only be a matter of time before he found a way to make permanent decisions. A document signed here, a supposed medical emergency there, and I would lose everything without realizing it until it was too late. Let me think about it, I said. There is not much to think about, Dad. It is for your own good. Always for my own good, as if I didn't know what was best for me. Give me a week. A week, then. But think about it seriously. You can no longer live alone, Dad. At your age, anything can happen. They left that night, and I finished packing my bags, box by box, a whole life reduced to cardboard and packing tape. The sale closed on a Tuesday afternoon at the notary's office. The buying couple, George and Monica Reynolds, were exactly what Mary had promised. 2 young professionals with a baby on the way, looking for their first property. They had eyes that sparkled like someone who was just beginning, the same illusion I had had 40 years ago when I bought that empty lot. We will take very good care of your house, Mr. Miller, Monica said with authentic sincerity. You can feel all the love that is in every corner. I almost cried, but I held it together. I smiled. I signed every document the lawyer presented to me. The bank transfer hit my account while we were still in the office. $1.8 million minus Mary's fees and the closing costs left me with $1.7 million net. What do you plan to do with that money? The lawyer asked as he stamped the final documents. Invest in something that gives me peace. That same afternoon, I opened 3 different accounts. A long-term investment account that would generate modest but safe interest. An emergency savings account with $150,000 that no one could touch without my personal and physical authorization at the bank. And a regular checking account for my monthly expenses. Everything solely in my name, with no beneficiaries, no joint holders, no way for another person to access that money, even if I was declared incapacitated. The lawyer I had hired made sure all accounts were protected with specific instructions. In case of illness or incapacity, the bank was to contact my lawyer directly, not a family member. Any attempt to place me under guardianship or take control of financial matters would have to go through him first, and he had strict instructions to fight every request, as if my life depended on it. It cost me $5,000 in additional legal fees, but every penny was worth it. Moving to the new apartment was almost a liberating experience. My belongings took up only half the available space. I realized how much weight I had uselessly carried all those years. Furniture I never used, clothes I hadn't worn in decades, decorative objects that only collected dust. My new life in the apartment began with a silence I hadn't experienced in years. It was not the empty silence of loneliness, but a silence full of possibilities. Every morning I woke up knowing that this space was entirely mine, that no one would judge my decor or suggest it was too big for me. But I knew the silence wouldn't last. Mike would eventually realize something, and I had to be prepared for that moment. During the first week in my new home, I established a routine. I ate my breakfast at the small table by the window, watching the city wake up. I went for a walk in the nearby park every morning, meeting other people my age who had also chosen to live independently. In the afternoons, I read, watched television without the constant burden of wondering when the doorbell would ring again for my son's occasional visits. I had only given my new phone number to my lawyer and Mary. I kept my old cell phone active, but I left it in the drawer of my nightstand, checking only once a day for messages from Mike. They were predictable in their falseness. Dad, I stopped by your house today, but you weren't there. Where were you? Dad, I need to talk to you about what we discussed. When can I visit? Dad, I'm worried. You don't answer my calls. Is everything okay? I didn't reply immediately. I waited a few hours, sometimes a whole day, before sending short, vague answers. I am fine, son. Busy with personal matters. Nothing that gave him real information. Nothing that allowed him to track what I was really doing. 2 weeks passed, then 3. Mike was growing impatient. His messages became more insistent, more demanding. Dad, I must talk to you. It is urgent. We have to discuss your future. My future, as if he had the slightest right to decide that. It was Ashley who finally showed up at the house, or what used to be my house. George Reynolds called me, confused and slightly alarmed. Mr. Miller, there is a lady here who claims to be your daughter-in-law. She is demanding to come in. She says she needs to pick up some of your personal effects. I explained that the house no longer belongs to you, that we bought it legally, but she insists. There must be a mistake. There is no mistake, Mr. Reynolds, I replied. The house is entirely yours now. My daughter-in-law has no rights over it, nor over anything it contains. If she continues to bother you, call the police. Are you sure? She seems very upset. Absolutely sure. And, Mr. Reynolds, it is possible that similar incidents might happen. Please do not let them in. All the sale documents are in order. You have nothing to worry about. I hung up and poured myself a cup of chamomile tea, with perfectly steady hands. So he had finally figured it out. I wondered how long it would take them to find me. The answer was less than 2 hours. My old phone began to ring endlessly. Calls from Mike, from Ashley, even from unknown numbers that I assumed were friends or relatives they had recruited to the cause. I didn't answer any of them. I simply sat on my new sofa, drinking my tea and waiting. Voicemails started to pile up. I listened to them that night, one by one, as if I were watching a particularly bad play. Dad, what have you done? Did you sell the house without telling us anything? How could you do something like this? Mike's voice oscillated between disbelief and poorly contained fury. Robert, we need to talk immediately. This is very serious. You have made a terrible mistake. Ashley tried to sound authoritative, but only managed to sound desperate. Dad, please pick up. We are very worried. Where are you living now? Why didn't you tell us you were going to sell? We had plans. Mike again, now trying the concerned son approach. The last message was the most revealing. Mike had stopped pretending. You know what, Dad? This is not going to stay like this. That house was our inheritance. We worked for that. We took care of you hoping you would be fair to us. You cannot just sell and keep all the money. We are going to fight, legally. Ashley already spoke with a lawyer. We have rights. Rights? What an interesting word coming from someone who planned to deprive me of mine. I deleted all the messages and turned off the phone. I wouldn't need it anymore. The next day, Mike showed up at the hospital where I had worked for 40 years. He asked for information about me at the Human Resources Department. He demanded to know if there was an updated contact address in my files. The area supervisor, Linda, who knew me well, politely explained that this information was confidential and that if I hadn't shared my address with him, the hospital couldn't do anything about it. He is my father. He is 73 years old. He sold his house and no one knows where he could be. He could be in danger. Mike had perfected the anxious son tone. Your father worked here for 40 years. I know him personally, young man. He is one of the most capable and intelligent men I have ever met. And if he decided not to reveal his location, I'm sure he has a good reason. Linda was not easily manipulated. I found out about this conversation because the supervisor called me that afternoon on my new number, laughing. Robert, your son came by today and made a scene. Is it true you need help? Everything is perfectly fine, Linda. It is just a son who cannot accept that his father still has the right to make his own decisions. Oh, I had one of those too. He wanted to put me in a nursing home to keep my house. I showed them that I can still overcome the obstacles of age. She laughed with that deep laugh I had always loved. If you need anything, just call me. I will, thank you, Linda. But Mike and Ashley didn't give up. They started searching for me systematically. They went to all the places they knew I used to go. The church in Westchester, the grocery store where I had done my shopping for years, Sarah's house, my niece. Sarah called me, worried. Uncle Robert, Mike came here. He says you sold your house and disappeared, that he is very worried about you. What is going on? I'm fine, Sarah. I just made some decisions about my life that Mike did not approve of, but they were my decisions. You sold the house, yes, and you are living alone somewhere. I'm living very well in a safe place, with my money protected and my peace of mind intact. There was silence. Then Sarah sighed. Mike asked me to try to convince you to live with them if I saw you. He said it has to do with it not being safe for you to live alone at your age. And what do you think? I think you are the strongest man I know, and if you made this decision, it was for a good reason. But I also think Mike is very upset. He says he is going to fight legally. Let him fight then. He has no legal grounds. Uncle, what really happened? I didn't tell her everything, but enough. The conversation I had accidentally overheard about the guardianship, the plans to manipulate me, the lawyer ready to help them strip me of my autonomy and my assets. Sarah remained silent for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled between anger and sadness. I cannot believe he is capable of that. He is your son. That is why it hurts so much. What are you going to do now? Nothing. I already did what I had to do, protect my assets, ensure my independence. and now I am going to live the rest of my life in peace. What Mike does or doesn't do is no longer my problem. But I knew Mike wouldn't give up so easily. I knew him too well. When he wanted something, he wouldn't stop until he got it, or until reality hit him hard enough to make him quit. And we hadn't reached that point yet. 3 weeks of relative silence followed. He didn't try to contact me directly or show up at the places he used to see me. That silence made me more nervous than all the calls combined. It meant he was planning something, regrouping his forces, preparing his next move. My lawyer called me on a Friday afternoon. Mr. Miller, I received a notification. Your son has filed a lawsuit expressing concern for your mental well-being and your capacity to manage your finances. It was exactly what I had heard in that conversation months ago. The plan had always been in motion, except that now I had nothing left that he could take away. What exactly is he alleging? That you sold your property impulsively and without consulting the family. That you have shown signs of confusion and cognitive decline. That you are socially isolated and not responding to your only son's attempts to communicate. He is requesting a mandatory psychological evaluation and a hearing to determine if you need temporary guardianship. How serious is this? It depends on the judge. Some take these requests very seriously, especially when they come from family members. Some are swift, others more skeptical. We will have to prepare a solid defense. Do you have any proof that you are in full mental capacity? I have 40 years of professional experience as a cardiologist. I have bank statements proving I have handled all my paperwork alone. I managed the entire process of selling my house. I signed every document with full awareness and professional advice. Good, that helps. But we will also need an independent psychological evaluation proving your cognitive capacity. And it would be helpful to have witnesses who can speak to your current mental state. The hearing will be in 5 days, but before that, the judge has ordered a social worker to visit your current residence to evaluate your living conditions. Of course, he wanted to see where I lived, how I lived, looking for any proof of personal neglect or inability to care for myself. It was part of the strategy I had heard about months ago. Does Mike know where I live? No. According to the documents he filed, he claims to have no knowledge of your current place of residence, which he uses as additional proof of your alleged mental decline. He says no person in their right mind would disappear without leaving an address for their only family. How does this work practically? I must ask you something important. Is there any chance your son is right? Has there been any moment of real confusion? Any significant forgetfulness? Anything he could use against you? I'm 73 years old, not 30. Sometimes I forget where I left my glasses or what I went to the grocery store for, but my mind is perfectly clear. I sold my house because I discovered my son was planning to steal it from me. I moved without telling him because I do not trust him. These are not the actions of a confused person. They are the actions of someone protecting himself. Then that is exactly what we will report to the court. The psychological evaluation took place 3 days later. Dr. Stephen Adams was a forensic psychiatrist with 30 years of experience in evaluating mental capacity in legal cases. He put me through memory tests, logical reasoning tests, temporal and spatial orientation tests. He asked me to solve math problems, memorize a list of words, explain the meaning of a proverb. Mr. Miller, your results are well above average for your age. There is no evidence of cognitive decline, dementia, or mental incapacity of any kind. Your short and long-term memory functions perfectly. Your reasoning skills are excellent. From a clinical standpoint, you are perfectly capable of managing your own affairs. Can you put that in writing? I already did. My report will be available to the judge before the hearing. The social worker arrived at my apartment on a Tuesday morning. She was a young woman, probably in her 30s, holding a tablet and wearing a professionally neutral expression. Mr. Miller, my name is Emily Carter. I am the social worker appointed by the court. I must ask you some questions and observe your current living conditions. Please go ahead. She walked slowly through the apartment, taking notes. She checked the kitchen, the bathroom, the bedroom, opened the refrigerator, and saw that it was well stocked with fresh food. She checked the medicine cabinet and verified that my medications were organized and up to date. She noted that the apartment was clean, tidy, and tastefully decorated. Do you live alone here? Yes. Who helps you with the shopping, cleaning, and meal preparation? No one. I do everything myself. Do you have any difficulties performing these tasks? None. I was a cardiologist for 40 years. I know perfectly well how to take care of myself. Why did you move from your previous house? Because I discovered my son was planning to take it from me using shady legal means. I sold it to protect my assets and moved here to have peace and quiet. Emily looked up from her tablet, showing genuine interest for the first time. That is a serious accusation. It is the truth. I overheard a conversation between my son, his wife, and a lawyer discussing how to obtain guardianship over me based on supposed mental issues I do not have. I took preventive measures. Do you have proof of that conversation? My word, and the fact that they are now doing exactly what they planned, requesting guardianship based on false allegations of mental incapacity. Emily typed for several minutes. Then she asked me more questions about my daily routine, my social activities, my physical health, my finances. I showed her my bank statements, my rent receipts, my updated medical records. Mr. Miller, I must say I have evaluated dozens of cases like this. Most are genuine situations where an elderly person needs help, but some are, she paused. Some are what? Some are family members trying to take control of assets before it is legally appropriate. And what do you think my case is? I believe you are perfectly capable of living independently and managing your own affairs. My report will reflect that. 2 weeks later came my 74th birthday. I hadn't planned to celebrate. The idea of celebrating while facing a legal battle with my own son seemed absurd, but Sarah insisted. Uncle, you cannot let Mike steal your birthday too. Let's grab breakfast. Just the two of us if you want. But you must celebrate the fact that you made it to 74 and are still the master of your own life. She was right. I accepted, but on one condition. I would choose the restaurant and only give her the address that morning. I didn't want to risk Sarah accidentally saying something to Mike. I chose a small diner downtown near my apartment, a cozy place where the food was good and the atmosphere quiet. I arrived early and asked for a table by the window. Sarah arrived at the agreed time with a small chocolate cake and a sincere hug. Happy birthday, Uncle. 74 years of being the strongest man I know. We ordered food, talked about her life, about her travel plans that were finally coming together. It was good to have a normal conversation, without tension, without a hidden agenda. We were about to order coffee when I saw something that made me shudder. Mike walked into the diner with Ashley. It was no coincidence. The way Mike scanned the restaurant with his eyes, the way Ashley walked half a step behind him, the look of determination on both their faces. They had come looking for me, and somehow they figured out where I would be. My eyes locked onto Sarah, who didn't react immediately. Uncle, I didn't... He called me this morning. He asked if I knew anything about you. I said no, but my voice shook. He must have checked my phone when I was in the bathroom at his house yesterday. He saw your texts. I'm sorry. I didn't have time to warn you. Mike had already reached our table. Dad, what a surprise finding you here. His voice dripped with sarcasm. Celebrating your birthday with Sarah, but not with your own son. There is nothing surprising about you showing up uninvited. It seems to be your specialty lately. Ashley pulled up a chair from the next table without waiting for permission, and they both sat down. Sarah looked at me with pleading eyes, visibly uncomfortable but unsure of how to handle the situation. We need to talk, Dad, about a lot of things. Mike placed his briefcase on the table as if marking his territory. We have nothing to talk about. Ah? Oh, really? How about selling the family house without telling us anything? How about disappearing for weeks without any explanation? How about the fact that you are acting completely irrationally? Irrationally? I repeated the word slowly. How interesting that you use exactly the same terminology your lawyer used in the documents filed with the judge. His expression tightened for a fraction of a second before he regained his composure. I filed those documents because I am genuinely worried about you. Any son would do that. Any son who wanted to rob his father. What do you mean? Sarah stifled a gasp. Ashley shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Mike, however, kept his gaze fixed on me. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you do. I know about the lawyer you spoke to. I know the plan to obtain my guardianship. I know you plan to declare me incapacitated, to take control of my assets. The only thing you didn't know is that I had already figured it out before you could pull it off. The silence that followed was heavy. Customers at neighboring tables stopped talking and looked at us discreetly. The waiter who was coming toward us with the coffee discreetly turned around. You're paranoid, Mike finally said. That is exactly the kind of thinking that proves you need help. Imagining conspiracies, believing your own family wants to hurt you. It is not paranoia when it is true, and I didn't have to imagine it. I heard it directly from you. Ashley spoke first. Robert, I understand you're upset, but you need to see this from a different perspective. Our perspective. You sold a property valued at almost $1.8 million without consulting anyone. You moved without leaving a contact address. You don't answer calls. These behaviors are concerning for someone your age. It was my house, bought with my own money, built with my own hard work. I didn't need to consult anyone to sell it. And I moved without leaving a contact address, precisely because I knew you would do this. Manipulate me, pressure me, try to control me. Nobody wants to control you, Dad. Mike resumed his soft tone, the one he used when he was trying to convince me of something. We just want what is best for you. You are our father. We love you. If you loved me, you would respect my decisions. If you loved me, you wouldn't have hired a lawyer to plan how to strip me of my autonomy. That is your version of events, a version distorted by your age, by the stress of living alone, by the natural confusion that comes with aging. It was, once again, a carefully constructed narrative, every word chosen to paint a confused old man rather than an intelligent man protecting what was his. I'm not confused, Mike. I am more lucid than I have been in years, and what I see clearly is that you plan to take everything from me under the guise of taking care of me. No one was going to take anything from you. Mike's voice rose. Several heads turned openly in our direction. That house was your inheritance for us, for your family. You sold it and kept all the money. And there was the truth, finally undisguised. It was my money, Mike, not your inheritance. Not until I die, and apparently you couldn't wait. Don't say that. It is horrible. Horrible? You know what is horrible? That your own son spies on you, that he plans to declare you incapacitated, that he hires unscrupulous lawyers to strip you of everything you worked for over 40 years? That is horrible. Ashley leaned forward, hands clasped on the table. Listen, Robert, let's be practical. You sold the house. Fine. But that money is too much for someone your age to handle alone. You could get scammed. You could make bad investments. You could lose it all. Let us help you manage it. We could open a joint account. I can advise you on investments. We will make sure you are safe. Safe for whom? For me or for you? For everyone. We are a family. Families don't plan to deceive each other. Mike slammed the palm of his hand on the table, knocking over the cups. Enough. This is ridiculous, Dad. Come on. Come with us right now. Let's go to your apartment. Pack your bags and come live with us where you will be safe. I'm not going anywhere with you. I'm not asking. I'm telling you. And I'm telling you again, you have no rights over me. I am a grown adult in full use of my faculties, and I make my own decisions. The hearing is in 3 days, Ashley said. The judge will hear all the evidence we have. The neighbors from your old house who reported you were disoriented. the hospital staff who noticed changes in your behavior before your retirement. Everything is documented. Lies, every word a carefully planted lie. Testimonies they probably fabricated or manipulated to build their case. Let them present whatever they want. I have my own evidence. Psychological evaluations proving my full mental capacity. Social worker reports confirming I live independently without problems. And above all, the truth. The truth? Mike laughed bitterly. Your truth is that you are stubborn, that you refuse to accept that you need help. It is your ego refusing to admit that you can no longer do everything alone. I stood up. Sarah did the same immediately, standing beside me in a silent gesture of support. Mike, I have done things alone for 73 years. I raised a son alone after your mother's death. I built a house alone. I made a career in a profession alone. And I will end my days alone, and that means keeping my dignity intact. Dad, please. For the first time, Mike's voice trembled with something that might have been genuine emotion, or perhaps it was just frustration that his plan was failing. It doesn't have to be this way. We can fix things. We really can. Fix what? Can you stop trying to control me? Can you respect that I am the master of my own life? No, Mike, you cannot. Not because you never saw me as a person with the right to decide, but because you only saw me as a source of resources that you would eventually inherit. I took out my wallet and left 3 $20 bills on the table, enough to cover Sarah's bill and mine with a generous tip. Happy birthday to me, I said without emotion. Sarah, let's go. This does not end here. Ashley stood up as well. We will fight until the end. Do it, but let me tell you one thing. While you were planning how to rob me, I was already protecting myself. The money is invested in accounts you cannot access. My apartment is under a company, of which I am the sole beneficiary, and I have clear legal instructions on what to do if you try to declare me incapacitated. That sounds like paranoia, Dad. To me, it sounds like intelligence, son. Something you clearly underestimated in me. We walked out of the restaurant under the watchful eyes of everyone present. The 5 days prior to the hearing were the longest of my life, not out of fear, but out of the anticipation of finally being able to tell my truth in front of someone who had the authority to make Mike and Ashley understand that they had lost. My lawyer, attorney Charles Harris, prepared me exhaustively. We analyzed every detail of my case, every document, every piece of evidence. He taught me how to stay calm regardless of the accusations they made, to answer clearly and distinctly, and not to let myself be emotionally provoked. They will try to paint you as a confused and stubborn old man, he warned me. Their strategy depends on proving to the judge that you are someone incapable of making rational decisions. You must prove exactly the opposite with every word you say. It will not be difficult. I just have to be myself. Exactly. Be the man who built a life out of nothing, who worked for 40 years as a cardiologist, who made smart decisions to protect his property. That is the man the judge needs to see. On the morning of the hearing, I dressed carefully. A gray suit I had bought especially for the occasion, comfortable but formal shoes. I wanted to look exactly like what I was, a 73-year-old man in full possession of his mental faculties. I arrived at the courthouse half an hour early. Attorney Harris was already there, reviewing documents in his briefcase. He greeted me with a reassuring smile. Ready? More than ready. Mike and Ashley arrived 15 minutes later with their lawyer, a man in his 50s in an expensive suit and a shark-like expression. His name was Attorney Richard Myers, according to his badge. They did not look at me directly, but I could feel his gaze evaluating me, looking for any sign of weakness they could exploit. The courtroom was small, formal, with dark wood walls and the smell of old paper. The judge entered right on time, a man in his 60s with gray hair and thick-rimmed glasses. He introduced himself as Judge Matthew Ross. Good afternoon. We are here to evaluate the request for temporary guardianship filed by Mr. Mike Miller regarding his father, Mr. Robert Miller. We will proceed with the testimonies. Attorney Myers, you may begin. Richard Myers stood up and began his presentation with a firm, authoritative voice. Your Honor, we are here because a concerned son has noticed alarming changes in his father's behavior. Mr. Robert Miller, 73 years old, has made impulsive and irrational financial decisions that endanger his future well-being. He sold his property, appropriated family assets valued at almost $1.8 million without consulting his loved ones, moved without leaving a contact address, and has cut off communication with his son. These are behaviors that suggest cognitive decline and the need for supervision. I sat quietly, my hands on my knees. Attorney Harris had warned me that his goal would be to let them talk first, to show their cards before we presented our defense. We have testimonies from neighbors who have reported erratic behavior. Mr. Miller was seen wandering the neighborhood at odd hours, seemed confused about what day it was, and forgot conversations he had had just days before. Lies, all lies, but he said them with such conviction that someone who did not know me might believe them. Furthermore, Your Honor, social isolation is a classic symptom of mental decline in the elderly. Mr. Miller has rejected all his family's attempts to help him, to maintain contact, even to find out where he lives. The rejection of family support is deeply concerning. We request that temporary guardianship be granted to my client to protect his father's interests. It is not about controlling him, but ensuring that the decisions he makes are for his own good and are supervised by someone who loves and cares for him. When he finished, the judge turned to Attorney Harris. The defense. My lawyer stood up calmly, unhurriedly. Your Honor, what we have heard is a carefully constructed narrative to justify taking control over the assets of a perfectly capable man. My client is not a confused old man. He is a retired professional with 40 years of experience as a cardiologist, with an impeccable track record of managing his own affairs, and who maintains his mental capacity completely intact. He placed several documents on the judge's desk. Here is the psychological evaluation from Dr. Stephen Adams, a certified forensic psychiatrist. The results show that Mr. Miller possesses cognitive capacity well above the average for his age. He shows no signs of dementia, mental decline, or inability to make decisions. The judge examined the documents closely. We also have the report from the social worker, Emily Carter, who visited my client's current residence and found him living completely independently in excellent conditions. His apartment is clean, tidy, and well maintained. He handles his own finances, his own meals, and his own personal care without any difficulty. Harris paused, letting the information sink in. The truth, Your Honor, is that my client discovered his son was planning to take control of his assets using exactly the mechanism we see today, a guardianship request based on false allegations of incapacity. He took smart, completely rational preventive measures to protect what rightfully belongs to him. That is absurd, Myers interrupted. Mike did not even raise his hand. Let him finish, Counselor, the judge said. Thank you, Your Honor. My client is prepared to testify under oath about what he heard. But beyond that, the facts speak for themselves. A man who can plan and execute the sale of real estate, who can find and move to a suitable new residence, who can manage complex financial investments is not a man who needs guardianship. He is a man who needs his family to respect his autonomy. The judge looked directly at me for the first time. Mr. Miller, I would like to hear your perspective. Could you explain in your own words why you sold your house? I stood up. My voice came out firm, clear, without a tremble. I sold it, Your Honor, because I overheard my son and his wife planning exactly this. I heard a conversation in which he discussed with a lawyer how to obtain guardianship over me, fabricate proof of mental incapacity, and take control of my assets. I was not going to wait for them to execute that plan, so I protected myself. That is a lie, Mike stood up. Dad, how can you say that? We would never do such a thing. Silence, The judge spoke with authority. Mr. Mike, sit down, please. Mr. Robert, continue. I worked 40 years as a cardiologist at the City General Hospital. I raised my son alone after becoming a widower. I bought a lot and built my house with my own money, brick by brick. I defended that property in a legal process that cost me 2 years and $100,000. I am not a man who makes impulsive decisions, Your Honor. All the decisions I have made in my life have been calculated and deliberate. And you do not believe your son might be genuinely concerned about you? If he were truly concerned, he would have respected my decision to sell. He would have asked how he could help me with the move. He would have celebrated that I secured my financial future. Instead, he hired a lawyer and filed for guardianship. Those are not the actions of a concerned son, Your Honor. They are the actions of someone furious about losing access to an inheritance he believed was his. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. The judge studied me for a long moment. Attorney Myers, do you have concrete proof of the mental decline you allege? Medical evaluations, documented reports, anything other than anecdotal accounts? Attorney Myers hesitated for the first time. Your Honor, we have testimonies from neighbors who saw him confused. Do you have sworn statements from those neighbors? Are there verifiable names and contact details, or is it second-hand testimony that your client reported? Your Honor, it is common in these cases that... Answer the question, Counselor. Do you have verifiable sworn statements or not? Not at this time, Your Honor, but we can obtain them if given time. The judge closed the file with a loud thud. He leaned back in his chair, looking alternately at Mike and me. Then he spoke with a voice that left no room for interpretation. I have reviewed all the submitted documentation. Robert Miller's psychological evaluation demonstrates full mental capacity. The social worker's report confirms that he lives independently without any issues. The financial statements prove that he manages his affairs responsibly. I see no concrete evidence to justify a guardianship, not even a temporary one. Mike turned pale. Ashley gripped the edge of the table. What I see, the judge continued, is a 73-year-old man who made smart decisions to protect his assets from what he perceived as a threat. That perception may or may not be accurate, but the fact is he had every legal right to sell his property, move wherever he wanted, and manage his money as he saw fit. He did not need anyone's permission. The judge looked directly at Mike. Mr. Mike Miller, I understand you may be concerned about your father, but concern is not a legal basis for stripping a competent person of their autonomy. Your father has proven to be in full possession of his mental faculties. This request for guardianship is denied. The bang of the gavel echoed through the room like a final thunderclap. Case closed. You are dismissed. I walked out of the courtroom with my head held high. Mike and Ashley remained in their seats, motionless as pillars of salt, staring at a world that had crumbled around them. I did not turn to look at them. I had nothing left to say to them. Out on the street, Attorney Harris shook my hand with a sincere smile. You were perfect, Mr. Miller. It could not have gone better. Thank you, Counselor, for everything. What are you going to do now? Simply live. And that was exactly what I did. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Mike tried to contact me 3 more times during the first month after the hearing. The messages ranged from pleas to accusations. I ignored them all. Finally, he gave up his attempts. Sarah visited me every 2 weeks. She told me that Mike and Ashley had to move into a smaller apartment because they could not afford the rent on their previous house. Her children asked about me, but Mike had told them that Grandpa was sick and could not receive visitors. Another lie to add to his collection. Doesn't it make you sad, Uncle? They are your grandchildren. It is sad that they are being raised by someone who values money more than family. But I cannot save them from that. I can only save myself. My life in the apartment settled into a comfortable and predictable routine. I woke up early, drank coffee while watching the sunrise over the city. I took a walk in the nearby park, where I befriended other men my age who had also chosen independence over the false comfort of depending on their children. One of them, Bernie Clark, told me his own story one afternoon while we drank tea in his apartment. His son had tried to put him in a nursing home to take his house. He had fought in court, won, and now lived in the same building as I did, 3 floors up. Our kids grew up in a time when everything was handed to them easily, he told me. They do not understand the value of sacrifice because they never had to make one. And when they see we have something they do not think about working to get it. They think about how to take it from us. He was right. We had worked so hard to give them a better life that we had forgotten to teach them to value the effort behind it all. With the money from the sale of my house, after paying all legal fees and consolidating my investments, I had $1.6 million well protected. The interest generated was approximately $8,000 a month, which, added to my retirement pension of $6,000, gave me $14,000 a month, more than enough to live comfortably. I enrolled in painting classes at the community center. I discovered I had a talent for landscapes, especially for capturing the evening light over the city skyline. My paintings began to decorate the walls of my apartment, replacing the old photographs of a family that no longer existed as I had imagined. A year after the hearing, I received a letter. It was from Mike. The handwriting was the same one I had known since he learned to write as a child, but the words were from a man I no longer recognized. Dad, I know I have no right to ask you for anything after everything that happened, but Ashley and I are going through financial difficulties. The kids need school supplies, new uniforms. I am asking you, not as your son, but as the father of your grandchildren, to consider helping us, just this once. Just this once. The same words he had used dozens of times before. Just this once. Just one more time, and another, until there was nothing left. I tore up the letter without replying. 2 months later, I learned through Sarah that Mike and Ashley had finally found jobs. She worked as a receptionist at a dental clinic. He was selling insurance with more seriousness, driven by real need rather than vague ambition. Slowly, they were learning to live with what they had, instead of living waiting for what they expected to inherit. Do you think he will ever apologize? Sarah asked. I don't know, and honestly, it no longer matters. I do not need his apologies to live in peace. I found that peace on my own, without expecting anything from anyone. For my 75th birthday, Sarah organized a small celebration in my apartment. Bernie and 3 other friends from the building came over. We ate chocolate cake, drank wine, and laughed as we remembered our legal and family battles, like warriors comparing scars from past wars. To us, Bernie raised his glass in a toast, to the men who refused to be invisible, who fought for what belonged to them, and who chose dignity over comfort. To us, we all repeated. That night, alone in my apartment, I stood by the window, looking at the city lights. 50 years since I became a widower. 40 years learning that true love is not shown with pretty words, but with authentic respect for who you are. Family is not defined by those who share the same blood, but by those who respect your decisions. Aging does not mean becoming invisible or incapable, but accumulating enough wisdom to know when to protect yourself. I thought about the house I had built, about the bricks I had laid one by one, about the walls that had seen my son grow up. I thought about how much I had feared losing it, how much that fear had almost paralyzed me, and I thought about how, in the end, losing it had saved me, because I discovered that what truly mattered was not in those walls. It was in me, in my ability to get back up, in my determination not to let anyone, not even my own blood, take my dignity away. I touched the cold glass with my fingers. 75 years old, and I was just getting started. I only needed to learn how to live for myself. It was not too late. It is never too late to choose your own peace. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Sarah with a photo of my grandchildren, beautiful, smiling, ignoring all the battles that had been fought in their name. Maybe someday when they were older, they would understand. Maybe they would come looking for me, and I would tell them this story. I would teach them that loving someone does not mean sacrificing yourself until you disappear. Or maybe not. Maybe this story ends here, in this apartment, with a 75-year-old man looking out the window, a glass of wine in his hand, feeling freer than he had been in decades. And it was enough. More than enough. It was fair. The following months brought unexpected changes. One March afternoon, while painting a landscape of the Hudson Valley from my window, I received a call from an unknown number. I normally wouldn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mr. Robert Miller? Yes, who is speaking? My name is Albert Miller. I am your nephew, son of your brother Jason. I fell silent. Jason had died 5 years ago. We had been estranged for over 20 years due to family conflicts over our father's inheritance. Exactly the same dynamic I had just lived through with Mike. Uncle Robert, I know you and my father did not speak for a long time, but before he died, he gave me a letter for you. He said I should only give it to you when you needed it. I just found out from a cousin about your situation with Mike, and I believe this is the moment. Can you bring it over? I will be there in an hour. Albert arrived on time. He was a man in his 40s with features that painfully reminded me of my brother. He held a yellowish envelope, clearly stored away for years. My father talked about you a lot in his final days, Albert said as he handed me the envelope. He said he had made the same mistakes he now saw repeating in the family. He wanted you to know the truth. I opened the envelope with trembling hands. Jason's handwriting, still firm despite his final illness, filled 3 pages. Robert, my brother. If you are reading this, it means Albert fulfilled my last wish. By the time you read these words, I will be gone, and perhaps that gives me the courage I lacked in life to tell you the truth. You were right. You were always right. When we fought over Dad's inheritance, I was not defending my rights. I was defending my greed. You wanted to divide everything equally, respecting our father's wishes. I wanted more, always more, because I believed I deserved more for being the oldest. I accused you of being selfish when you were the only one being fair. I called you a traitor when you were simply defending what was right. And I lost 20 years of brotherhood over money that in the end was spent on things I don't even remember. The worst part is that by doing so, I taught my son the wrong values. Albert grew up seeing me fight with you, seeing me prioritize money over family. It took me years to realize the damage I had done. Before I died, I told him the whole truth. I told him you were the man of integrity, and I was the one blinded by ambition. I asked him that if you ever found yourself in a similar situation with your own son, to find you and give you this letter. Because I want you to know, brother, that when children turn against their parents for money, it is not the parents' fault. It is the result of a society that teaches them to value the inheritance more than the legacy of character. You did the right thing by protecting yourself. I should have respected your boundaries and your dignity. Instead, I destroyed our relationship for material goods that now, from my hospital bed, I see with total clarity were not worth a single day of your company. If your son is doing what I did, do not give in. The dignity you protect now is worth more than any temporary peace you might buy with your surrender. I loved you, brother. I always loved you. It just took me too long to remember that love is shown with respect, not with demands. Your brother who finally understood, Jason. Tears streamed down my cheeks without me being able to stop them. Albert placed a hand on my shoulder. My father changed in his final years, Uncle. He became wiser, more humble. He taught me that it is never too late to acknowledge your mistakes, even if you can no longer fix them. He asked me not to make the same mistakes with my family. Thank you for bringing me this, I said with a broken voice. You don't know how much I needed to hear this. There is something else. My father left instructions in his will. He had set aside a specific amount of money for you, which I was supposed to deliver along with this letter. $30,000. He said it was your rightful share of your father's inheritance that he never gave you. I cannot accept that. Please, uncle. It was his last wish. Let him make this right, even if it is late. I accepted, not for the money, but to honor my brother's memory and the man he had become in the end. After Albert left, I reread Jason's letter 3 times. Every word was a mirror to my own situation with Mike. The difference was that Jason had had time to repent. Mike was still in the resentment stage. Would Mike ever reach the point Jason had reached, or would he remain trapped in his bitterness forever? I had no answer. But Jason's letter gave me something more valuable than certainty. It gave me validation, a testimony from someone who had been on the other side, who finally understood who had been right. That night, I kept the letter in a special box, along with the most important photographs of my life. Someday, if Mike came looking for me with true remorse, I would show it to him. Maybe seeing the words of someone who walked his exact path and regretted it could help him. But I was not going to chase him to show him. That decision had to be his. Days turned into months, and months into another year. At 76, my life had found a rhythm I never imagined possible. Mornings began with coffee and the newspaper, sitting by the window while the city woke up. There was something deeply satisfying in the simplicity of that routine. Bernie and I had become inseparable. Every afternoon, weather permitting, we walked together through Central Park, talking about everything and nothing. He had been a civil engineer. He had built bridges and buildings that still stood across the city. "You know what is ironic?" he said to me one afternoon as we rested on a bench. "I spent my life building structures that would last for generations, but I couldn't build a relationship with my son that lasted even 10 years after my retirement." "It was not us who failed," I replied. "We did everything we could. We gave them an education, values, opportunities. If they chose the path of greed over love, that was their choice. I know, but it still hurts. It will always hurt. Love does not cease to exist just because the person you love disappoints you." Bernie nodded, watching a young family walk by. Young parents pushing a stroller, laughing together. "Do you think they will end up like us?" he asked. "Some will, some won't. It depends on what values they teach their children now, while they're still little." At the community center, my painting classes had become more than just a hobby. The instructor, Victoria Smith, an artist in her 50s, had encouraged me to exhibit some of my work in a local exhibition for senior artists. "Robert, you have a real talent for capturing light," she told me one day while examining my latest landscape of the city skyline. "You should share this with more people." "I only paint for myself," I replied. "I do not need external validation." "It is not about validation. It is about connection. When you share your art, you share a piece of how you see the world. That has value." I agreed to participate in the exhibition, more to please Victoria than for my own interest. But when opening night arrived and I saw strangers stopping in front of my paintings, reading the small descriptions, commenting on the warmth of the colors or the serenity of the compositions, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Pride in something completely mine, not defined by my medical career or my role as a father, but by who I was as an individual. An older woman, probably around my age, lingered for a long time in front of my painting of the sunset over Brooklyn. "It is beautiful," she told me when I approached. "You can feel the peace in every brushstroke." "Who is the artist?" "I am," I replied almost shyly. "Do you have a gift? Have you been painting all your life?" "No, I only started 2 years ago." "Only 2 years? It is extraordinary. You must have found something very special in your life to be able to paint with such serenity." "I found my freedom," I said simply. She smiled with an understanding that can only come from someone who has walked similar paths. "Me too," she said. "It took losing my family to find myself." We talked for almost an hour. Her name was Carol Davis, and her story was surprisingly similar to mine. Children who had viewed her only as a source of money, legal battles, the decision to protect herself before it was too late. "Don't you feel lonely sometimes?" she asked me. "Sometimes," I admitted, "but I prefer chosen solitude over toxic company." "Me too," she said, "although I have learned that solitude does not mean being alone. I have friends, activities, a life that is entirely mine." We exchanged phone numbers before saying goodbye. Not with romantic intentions, we were both too old and too wise for that, but with the recognition of two souls who had survived similar storms and could understand each other's journey. Carol became a regular friend. We met for coffee every week, sometimes talking about our children with that mix of love and resignation that only betrayed parents can understand. Sometimes we simply enjoyed conversations about art, politics, the small pleasures of life that are appreciated more when you have been on the brink of losing everything. One afternoon, while we were drinking coffee in my apartment, Carol asked me a question that took me by surprise. "Robert, if Mike came tomorrow, truly remorseful, asking for your forgiveness, would you forgive him?" I sat in silence for a long time, thinking about the question, about all its implications. "Forgiving is not the problem," I finally said. "I could forgive him tomorrow if he came with genuine remorse. But forgiving does not mean forgetting. It does not mean trusting again. It does not mean giving him access to my life or my resources again." Then what would it mean? It would mean releasing the anger I carry. It would mean accepting that he made his choices and I made mine. It would mean wishing him well in his life, but from a distance. Carol nodded slowly. "That is the part people do not understand about forgiveness," she said. "They think forgiving means restoring the relationship to what it was before. But some relationships, once broken in a certain way, can never go back to what they were," I added, "and that is okay. We can love someone and still choose not to have them in our lives. They are not mutually exclusive." That conversation with Carol made me think deeply. Was I waiting for Mike to come, or had I closed that door completely? The truth was complicated. A part of me, that part that never stops being a father, no matter how much it hurts, still hoped that someday Mike would wake up, just as Jason did. But another part, the part that had learned to protect itself, knew I could not live waiting for that day. I had to live as if that day would never come, and be at peace with that. Jason's letter remained in its box, waiting. But I was not waiting. I was living. And for the first time in decades, living felt like enough. The second anniversary of the sale of my house arrived on a rainy September day. I woke up early, as always, but this time with a different feeling. It was not exactly sadness, but rather a deep reflection on everything that had changed in those 2 years. I had gone from being a frightened man, hiding in his own house while his son planned to rob him of everything, to being a free man who had completely rebuilt his life on his own terms. I made my coffee and sat by the window, watching the rain fall over Brooklyn. On the table in front of me were the documents I had been reviewing the night before: my bank statements, my investments, my insurance policies. Everything was in perfect order. My estate, instead of decreasing, as Mike probably expected it to do without his supervision, had grown. The conservative investments I had chosen with the advice of a good accountant had yielded well. My monthly expenses were modest. I lived comfortably, without excessive luxury, but without deprivation. I had done something I never thought I would do. I had updated my will. But this time, the decisions were completely aligned with my values and my peace of mind. The bulk of my estate would go to create a foundation that would provide scholarships for low-income medical students, a smaller portion for Sarah, who had shown loyalty and genuine love, a symbolic amount for Mike, enough so he knew I had not forgotten him, but not enough to validate his behavior, and a sealed letter that would only be opened after my death. In it, I explained everything: why I made the choices I made, what I heard that afternoon at the notary's office, how I felt when I discovered the plan. It was not a letter of revenge, but of truth. I wanted Mike to know exactly what he had lost and why, once I was no longer around. My lawyer had suggested leaving nothing for Mike, removing any acknowledgement. Why give him anything after what he tried to do to you? He had asked. Because he is still my son, I replied, and because I want him to know that, even after everything, I never stopped being his father. I just stopped being his victim. That rainy morning, as I drank my coffee, the phone rang. It was Sarah. Uncle, are you busy today? Never too busy for you. What is wrong? I need to talk to you about something important. Can I come over? Sure, come whenever you want. Sarah arrived an hour later, soaked despite her umbrella. She wore a serious expression that worried me immediately. Is everything okay? I asked as I poured her hot coffee. Yes and no, Uncle. I have to tell you something about Mike. My heart raced involuntarily, that paternal reflex that never completely fades. What happened? Is he okay? Physically, yes, but he is in trouble, Uncle. Serious trouble. I sat down slowly, bracing myself for what was coming. Ashley left him. She took the kids and went to Chicago with her family. She filed for divorce. And Mike, well, after losing his sales job, he accumulated debt, trying to maintain a lifestyle he could no longer afford. He is in trouble with the bank, with credit cards. He is on the verge of bankruptcy. I felt a mix of emotions. Sadness, a pinch of satisfaction from the poetic justice, guilt for feeling that satisfaction, and finally, weariness. And why are you telling me this? Because he came looking for me yesterday, Uncle. He was crying. He said he had lost everything, that he finally understood what he had done to you. He asked me to ask you if you would consider talking to him. Silence filled the apartment. The rain beat against the window, creating a steady rhythm that somehow made the moment feel even heavier. What did you tell him? That I would ask you, but that I promised him nothing. Uncle, you don't have to see him if you don't want to. No one would judge you for that. I stood up and walked to the window. Down on the street, I saw a young father running with his small son under an umbrella, both laughing as they splashed in the puddles. Such a simple, pure scene. A scene Mike and I had lived once, so long ago it seemed from another life. Do you think his remorse is genuine? I asked without turning around. I think he is desperate. Whether that makes it genuine or not, I don't know. But I do know he is broken, Uncle, in every sense of the word. Being broken is not the same as being remorseful. I know. I turned to Sarah. What do you think I should do? That is not my decision. But if you ask me what I would do, I think I would talk to him. Not to give him money, not to rescue him, but to tell him face to face what you need him to know. And then whatever his reaction is, you can close that chapter, knowing you did what was right for you. She was right. I had spent 2 years avoiding this confrontation. Perhaps it was time to face it. Not for Mike, but for me. Tell him he can come. Tomorrow at 3 p.m, here. Sarah looked relieved. Do you want me to stay with you when he comes? No. This is something Mike and I need to do alone. After Sarah left, I spent the rest of the day in a state of nervous anticipation. I called Carol. I needed to talk to someone who understood. Are you sure you want to do this? She asked me after hearing the situation. No, but I think I need to do it. And if he comes just to ask for money, then at least I will know for sure what kind of man he has become. And if he is truly remorseful, that is the hardest question. Then I will have to decide what that means to me. Forgiveness does not mean reconciliation. I can forgive him and still maintain my boundaries. You are stronger than you think, Robert. Or more foolish, I replied with a bitter laugh. No, strong. It takes more strength to face this than to avoid it. The night before the meeting with Mike, I barely slept. I dreamed of him as a boy, of Ellen, of the days when we were a complete, happy family. I dreamed of the house in Westchester, of the bougainvillea garden. I dreamed of everything I had lost and everything I had gained. I woke up at 5 a.m, resigned to the fact that sleep would not return. I made coffee, showered, dressed carefully. Not a suit, that would be too formal, but presentable clothes. I wanted to look like what I was, a man who had kept his dignity intact. The hours passed with torturous slowness. I read the newspaper without really processing it. I tried to paint but could not concentrate. Finally, at 5 minutes to 3, I heard the doorbell. My heart pounded as I walked to the door. I took a deep breath and opened it. Mike was there, but not the Mike I remembered. This man seemed to have aged 10 years in two. He had deep bags under his eyes. He had lost weight. His clothes, though clean, were wrinkled. But the most striking thing was his expression. Completely defeated. "Hi, Dad," he said in a barely audible voice. "Mike, come in." We walked in silence. I directed him to the living room, where we sat on opposite ends of the sofa, like two strangers evaluating each other. "Thank you for seeing me," he began. "I know I have no right to be here." "No, you do not. But here you are." He wrung his hands nervously, a gesture I recognized from when he was a child and had done something wrong. "Dad, I came to apologize. For everything. For planning to take your house. For trying to declare you incapacitated. For treating you like you were just a source of money and not my father." The words sounded rehearsed, but there was real emotion behind them. "Why now, Mike? Why not 2 years ago, or a year, or 6 months?" "Because you were right. You were right about everything. I didn't see it until I lost it all. Ashley, my kids, my job, my house, everything collapsed, Dad. And as I sat in my one-bedroom apartment last month, unable to pay the light bill, I finally understood." "What did you understand?" "That you were never the problem. I was. My greed, my impatience, my belief that I deserved your money just because I was your son. I thought you were stubborn and difficult, when in reality you were just protecting yourself. From me. From your own son." Tears began to stream down his cheeks. "The worst part is you were right about Ashley, too. As soon as the money ran out, she left. She didn't care about me. She cared about the lifestyle she thought I would give her. And I put her above you. I put money above you." I stayed silent, letting him talk, letting him get out everything he had come to say. "I didn't come to ask you for money, Dad. I know I do not deserve a single dime from you. I came because I needed you to know that I finally get it. I finally understand what I lost. And it is not the house. It is not the inheritance. It is you. I lost my father, and it was completely my fault." His pain was palpable, real, but a part of me, the part that had been hurt so deeply, remained cautious. "Mike, do you know what the most painful moment of all this was for me?" "What?" "It was not when I overheard your plan in the notary office. It was not when you filed the guardianship lawsuit. It was before all of that. When I realized that when you looked at me, you no longer saw your father. You only saw an obstacle between you and the money you thought you deserved. Dad, let me finish. I spent 2 years rebuilding my life. I found peace, freedom, dignity. I made friends who value me for who I am, not for what I have. I learned to live for myself. And now you come here, broken and remorseful. And part of me wants to hug you and tell you everything is okay. But another part knows I can never be vulnerable with you again. I don't expect you to trust me again. I know I destroyed that. I just wanted you to know that I am sorry. I truly am sorry." I stood up and went to the study. I returned with Jason's letter and handed it to Mike. "Read this." I watched him as he read. I saw his expressions change from confusion to recognition to horror to renewed tears. When he finished, he looked up at me with red eyes. "This is exactly what I did. Exactly. Yes, history repeats itself in families. Your Uncle Jason was lucky enough to realize it before he died. You are lucky enough to realize it while we are both still alive. What can I do, Dad? How can I fix this?" "You cannot fix it, Mike. Some things, once broken, cannot be repaired. But you can learn from this. You can make sure you do not repeat these mistakes with your own children. Do you forgive me?" The question hung in the air between us. It was the central question, the real reason he had come. I forgive you, I finally said, but forgiving you does not mean things will go back to the way they were. It does not mean I will give you access to my life or my resources again. It means I release the anger I carry. It means I wish you well in your life, but from a distance. Can I at least... Can I visit you sometimes? Can I try to rebuild something, even if it is small? I thought about it carefully. Once a month you can come over for coffee. We can talk. But you have to understand that this is not a full reconciliation. It is a very small beginning, and it is entirely up to you to prove with actions, not with words, that you have truly changed. I will, Dad. I promise you. Do not promise me. Just do it. Mike stayed a little longer. We talked carefully about superficial things. His new job at an auto parts store, earning a fraction of what he used to make. His children, whom he missed desperately. His small apartment, so different from the house he once had. I did not offer him money. I did not offer him solutions. I just listened to him. And when he left, we shared a brief, awkward hug loaded with all the weight of what we had lost and the small hope of what we might someday rebuild. After he left, I sat in silence for a long time. I did not feel victorious, nor particularly generous. I felt tired, but also strangely at peace. I called Carol. How did it go? He came. He apologized. I think it was genuine. And I told him I forgave him, but that forgiveness does not mean total reconciliation. I gave him a very small chance to prove he has changed. How do you feel about it? Honestly, I don't know. Ask me in 6 months. Carol laughed softly. You did the right thing, Robert. You gave him a chance without sacrificing your peace. That is wisdom. The months that followed were revealing. Mike kept his word. He came once a month on time, without asking for anything. He brought coffee from a local bakery, nothing expensive, but chosen with care. Our conversations were cautious at first, superficial, but slowly, very slowly, we began to find something resembling a father-son relationship again. Not like before, that was lost forever, but something new, built on more honest foundations. I never gave him money. I never rescued him from his problems. And he never asked. That, more than any apology, showed me that perhaps he had truly changed. 6 months after our meeting, I received a call from Ashley. It was brief, formal, but contained something that sounded like genuine regret. Robert, I just wanted to say that I am sorry for my part in everything that happened. Mike told me you guys are slowly rebuilding. The kids ask about you. If you ever want to see them, let me think about it, I replied, and I thought about it a lot. Bernie gave me his advice one afternoon while we walked through Central Park. The grandchildren are innocent in all this. They are not to blame for their parents' decisions. If you want to know them, do it. But on your terms, in your territory, when you decide. He was right. 2 months later, Mike brought his kids, my grandchildren, whom I barely knew, to visit me. Sam, 8 years old, and Chloe, 6, were shy at first. But I showed them my paintings, told them stories about when their father was a boy, the good ones, not the complicated ones, and they slowly opened up. Seeing Mike with his children broke my heart in a different way. I saw how much he loved them, how much he regretted having temporarily lost them too because of his choices. You are being a better father to them than I was to you, I told him in a private moment, while the children played in the building's small garden. Dad, you were a great father. I'm saying I see that you are learning from all this, and that gives me hope. That night, after they left, Bernie came over for a glass of wine with me. How do you feel? He asked. Like maybe, just maybe, history does not have to repeat itself forever. Maybe Mike will break the cycle with his own kids. That would be a good legacy. It would be the best legacy. Now, at 77 years old, my life has a fullness I never imagined possible. I have my freedom, my dignity intact, my investments secure. I have true friends like Bernie and Carol. I have my art, which has become a genuine passion, and I have a cautious but real relationship with Mike, built not on inheritance expectations, but on mutual respect earned with difficulty. Is it perfect? No. Is it what I once imagined? Not that either, but it is honest, and that is worth more than any illusion of family perfection. I have updated my will one more time. The Medical Scholarship Foundation remains the primary beneficiary. Sarah will receive a generous sum. Bernie and Carol, as my closest friends, will have something to remember me by. And for Mike, I will leave enough so he knows he never stopped being my son, but not so much that he won't have to keep working for his own life, because I learned that sometimes the greatest act of love is not rescuing someone from the consequences of their own choices. The sealed letter remains in the will, but now with an addition. A second letter I wrote after our partial reconciliation, explaining the complete journey. Not just the pain, but also the healing. I want Mike to know when I am no longer around that in the end, love won. Not the blind love that ignores the damage, but the love that sets boundaries, that protects dignity, that forgives without forgetting. This morning, as I drink my coffee by the window, I look at the city I have come to love in a new way. It is no longer just the place where I lived my professional life. It is the place where I learned to live for myself. My phone buzzes. It is a message from Mike. Good morning, Dad. I'll see you next Tuesday. I want to show you something Sam drew at school. It will remind you of your old house. I smile. Tuesday, our monthly day. Our small tradition that we are building. Sure, son. I will be waiting for you here. And as I type that reply, I realize something. Peace does not always come from completely closing doors. Sometimes it comes from learning to open them just enough to let the light in, but little enough to protect what you have built. I am 77 years old. I have lived through betrayal, pain, loss, but I have also lived through rebirth, freedom, and recovered dignity. And if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't change a thing, because every choice brought me here, to this apartment, to this life, to this peace that I earned with my own courage. This is my story. It is not perfect. It does not have a completely happy ending in the traditional sense, but it is real. It is mine, and it is enough, more than enough. It is fair.